Hey everybody, Corey here, coming at you with another knife review, and oh my god, this knife, the CKF FIF20. It's been a long time since a knife was so good that it almost made me consider whether or not there was a point in pursuing other knives. The FIF20 is absolutely ridiculous. The FIF20 is absolutely everything that everyone says it is, which is pretty much just good. Let's talk about that now. I'm going to quickly talk about what I think is good and what I think is bad about this knife, and we can go into more details in a little bit. But let's just start with the bad. Bad. There's no detent ramp. There is no over travel stop. The pivot backs out after you've swung it quite a few times, probably like 100 times if you don't put Loctite on it. The body screws go all the way through the knife, so if you ever strip the threads, you strip your back spacer and you strip the threads on the other side of the knife, and it basically becomes completely unusable. And there's only one deployment method: front flipping. I know it's weird to start a video by saying it's like the greatest knife in the world and then hit you with a bunch of bad stuff. Let me focus more on the good right now. First and foremost, look at this action. I'm going to put pressure on the lock bar so that the knife doesn't drop shut. Look what happens just as soon as I remove pressure from the lock bar. Oh my god. It does that every time. It did that straight from the factory. It did it straight out of the box. It did it without any lube. It did it without any tuning, and it did it while it was perfectly centered with no blade play and no lock rock. Hands down, no questions asked, by a mile, the best action on a knife I have ever handled in my entire life. This beats all of the Rayots that I haven't even done my reviews on yet, that I've just been drooling over up to this point. This is ludicrous. Now, if you're not into drop shut actions, I'm very sorry. Obviously, this knife isn't for you. But if you are, if you're into how mechanically impressive it is that a knife can do this, this is ludicrous. Absolutely ludicrous, and I have no idea how I can ever find a knife out there that ever beats this from an action standpoint. I don't believe that I can. It's absolutely ridiculous. Next thing I'll say, the ergos, fantastic. And this is a little bit surprising because when I first got this knife, I actually thought it might not be that comfortable. Look at these sharp edges. Look at these sharp edges here. Look at this sharp edge here where the transition is. And when the knife is disengaged, look at this sharp edge here, right? It's got a bunch of sharp edges. But the weird thing is, it is an outstandingly comfortable knife. However they've done it, right? However they've designed it. Where my finger hits where you would think it would be sharp, just doesn't hurt. It's not comfortable, or it's not uncomfortable. My finger just lands right in the middle. Right where this hump is, where you could have a hot spot, nope. It lands right between my middle finger and my ring finger. Back here, some people have said, oh, I front flip it and it hurts my fingers. I go right past it. It doesn't touch me at all. It doesn't affect me at all. And even when I'm grabbing it right here, it's nothing. The knife looks like it should have hot spots, but it's actually outstandingly comfortable. So that's something that I'll say. Number two, on the ergos, it utilizes the real estate really well. Look at how far up this choil comes for your two fingers. Look at how close it is to where the blade actually is. Compare that to something like this Pena Mula. Look at how much space there is between the end of that choil and the blade. That might not seem like a big idea or a big deal. Look at when I grab the Mula, I devour this knife. And to be honest, my pinky's kind of sliding off and it's a little bit uncomfortable. Why? because they've wasted so much space up here by the pivot. If I go up here, look at that. Look at that. I'm no longer slipping off the knife. I've got enough knife sticking out, and the knife becomes completely comfortable to hold. Compare that to the FIF. Look at how much space is between my index finger and the blade, and look at how much knife is sticking out. Even though this is a relatively small knife, they've utilized the real estate outstandingly well. Just outstanding is the word of the day for this knife. The other thing I'll say, zero lock stick. 0, 0, 0, 0, 0. It is like, I've never used the phrase glass on glass to describe disengaging a lock. I've used it to describe an action before. There is absolutely zero lock stick. It is so impressive. There's no friction whatsoever. Last thing I'll say about the grind. Boy, I know a lot of people are going to have a hard time putting a $400, $500 knife to work, but you can. The blade stock is relatively thin, and the grind is so tall and so aggressive. This thing slices like nobody's business. So what are we looking at? We're looking at a knife that is manufactured borderline flawlessly. It's got the best action I've ever handled in my entire life. It's got very impressive ergos, and it's got a very usable blade. What else do you want? What else do you want in a knife? Maybe you want a different locking mechanism. Maybe you don't like frame locks. Sorry. You would have known that this wasn't for you just by starting the video because you see that it's a frame lock, right? But for what this is, oh my God. I would pay $430 for this 10 times over if I could get 10 more knives that had this level of build quality. It is absolutely ridiculous. I have zero regrets. Because of that, this will absolutely be staying in my collection for the foreseeable future. I will probably be buried with this knife. It is absolutely ridiculous. Other than that, you know, to go back to the things that I said the knife could improve upon. No detent ramp doesn't really break my heart, but it's just weird on a knife at this price. It's usually something you see on knives at this price. No over travel stop. I've always said over travel stops feel kind of pointless because what kind of guerrilla crap are you doing with your knife where you bend the lock bar so far over that you essentially break it or you ruin it or you decrease the tension? It's crazy. But again, an over travel stop is just something that you see on knives at this price point. The pivot backing out. I think the pivot backing out is just a result of the fact that this is a front flipping knife, and cue the guys coming into the comments section saying, I have a front flipping knife and my pivot doesn't back out. Great, I'm glad. For all the things that this knife does well, given that the pivot backs out after slamming it open about 100 times, that's when I start to just begin to see some blade play. I'll take it. If that's the worst thing this knife does, which it arguably is, that's all I got. That's fine. That's fine. For all the things that this knife does right, the pivot backing out after slamming it open 100 times, fine. Absolutely fine. You know, the deployment method thing, it's almost criminal. That's the one thing I'll say about the deployment methods or the lack thereof. For a knife with an action this good, I want everything. Give me a fuller, give me a thumb stud, give me a flipper tab. Like, this thing has the potential to be a fidget monster when it drops like that. They've done such a good job tuning it, though, you know, for the front flipper. It is by far the best front flipper that I've ever handled in my entire life, so I really can't fault them for that. But, you know, it'd be nice to at least see other versions of this knife with different deployment methods. But, guys, other than that, this knife broke me. This knife almost made me, you know, I started shopping. I'm like, okay, what's my next knife? After I bought this one, I just kept looking at knives, and all I could think of was this knife. And I was like, what's the point? What's the point? It's not going to beat the FIF. Nothing's ever going to beat the FIF. What's the point of buying other knives? That's how good this knife is. This knife almost made me, like, quit knives. But of course, it's an almost because I'm addicted, and so are you probably if you're watching this video. But yeah, guys, that's all I have to say on the FIF20. If you've got the money, if this is something you've been thinking about, oh my God, buy with confidence. Seriously, if you can get your hands on one of these, if they ever make more of these, ludicrous. And there's no doubt in my mind that for the average person, this is going to blow every knife you've ever had out of the water, and you will absolutely be satisfied with your purchase. You will have absolutely no regrets. Guys, I hope you enjoyed this. I'll see you guys next time, because there will be a next time, because, you know, we never quit. So I'll see you guys next time.